Hi, everybody. My name is Dennis Ibude, and I am one of the lead tutors here at Enlightened Tutors. This week's lesson is going to be on introduction, but more specifically on hook strategies, different hook strategies, actually, and looking at why these strategies are indeed effective. Okay, so with no further ado, let's jump right into this lesson. Okay, so what is an hook? What is an hook? A hook is an attention grabbing strategy that engages the reader. As a writer, you want the reader to feel like you are warm, you are clever, and you are interesting. To get to this reaction, you need to make your introduction stylish, memorable, and effective. Okay, so that's why I wanted to just show you one of the ways, a couple strategies you can use to write an effective hook so that you can have the reader continue reading your work. Okay, so like I said before, a hook is an attention grabbing strategy that engages the reader. And before I look at different hook strategies, I want to just get one thing off my chest real quick, and which is beginning with a question. A lot of people love starting their introduction with a question. And I know you have been taught to begin with an interesting question. Here's the problem. Your question is interesting. It is not. And I know you think it is, but it isn't. Beginning with a question is lazy, and I feel like you can be more creative than that. So let's do something else. The first technique we are looking at today will be personal story. So personal stories is a good way to draw the reader in. Readers respond to personality. And so share a short story about a moment in your life. You can accomplish this with just a few sentences. You don't need to go too much in depth, but a personal story will be one of those ways that you can draw the reader in, and not only draw the reader in, you give the reader an intimate, memorable slice of life too, and which is a piece of your life, which makes them want to continue reading. So that's going to be the first strategy: personal story. Let's look at a personal story slash anecdote. The topic is George Washington, and it reads: It seemed that all they did was drive, and each time they stopped, it was to visit another site. That morning in Washington, D.C. was different. They stepped out of their hotel and walked 4 or 5 blocks. Suddenly, she was amazed by all that surrounded her. The Capitol building off in the distance, the White House to my left, a vast field of grass and two ponds reflecting the towering white monument. What's that? She asked her dad, and he responded, That's the monument of George Washington. Her mind started to wonder, a monument? A city name in his honor? This must be someone who made a difference. Through his courage, leadership, and patriotism, George Washington was able to accomplish so much. Let's look at what makes this an effective personal story slash an effective hook strategy. Any great story has sensory details. And if you don't know what sensory details are, sensory details include sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. So what sensory details did y'all notice in this personal story? If you chose sight, you are 100% correct. Yes. Throughout this personal story, I was able to imagine this individual's journey from the time where this individual was driving all day to when this individual and her father finally reached DC, and she was amazed by everything that she saw. Let's quickly just dive into more specific. Now, the first place where I was able to imagine, like I said, was before the first sentence. It seemed that all they did was drive. So I can imagine the different emotions that she might be feeling and being stuck on the road for a long period of time. The next place is they stepped out of their hotel and walked 4 or 5 blocks. The fact that she was very specific on how many blocks she walked, so I can imagine her walking 4 or 5 blocks. Is a vivid image of it. The next place was she was amazed by all that surrounded her. And then she goes into more specifically naming those things that surrounded her, which is a Capitol building, the White House to the left, a vast field of grass, and two ponds reflecting a towering white monument. At the end of the personal story, the writer includes a dialogue between herself and her father. And this is an effective method to include when you are writing a personal story or writing a personal story as a hook for an introduction. And what makes this effective is seeing this dialogue and seeing the conversation between the girl and her father. As the reader, I felt like I was part of that conversation. I felt the emotions, the impact that George Washington had on this individual, and the impact that George Washington also had on the father. And if we look at one of their dialogue, her response is this: a monument, a city named in his honor. This must be someone who made a difference. Through his courage, leadership, and patriotism, George Washington was able to accomplish so much. So she ends it off by giving her reaction to the detail her father gave her, which is, yes, this is George Washington. And she was amazed that this individual was able to be recognized in such a high fashion that he must have some type of importance. So including a dialogue is effective and will make your personal story come alive even more. All right. The final strategy I'm going to leave you all with is starting your introduction with an unusual or bizarre fact. And I'm going to leave you all with one now. Bill Gates, founder of Microsoft, could spend $1 million per day, every day, for 7 days a week and will not run out of money until he is 311 years old. Bizarre fact is true. Thank you for hanging out with me and learning about different hook strategies and why these strategies are indeed effective. If you know anyone that is in middle school or high school and they need tutoring, Regents Prep, SAT help, ACT help, or anything relating to school itself, studying, time management, definitely check out Enlightened Tutors.